Hey guys, it's Dave here from Whiskey Blooded. Welcome back and happy Wednesday to you. As you may notice, I have a plethora of bourbon here in front of me, and I've been reading over your guys' comments, and one that is always coming up is, hey Dave, I'm newer to bourbon, or can you recommend a bourbon for a beginner? So today we're doing top 5 beginner bourbons, and these are all readily available, so you should be able to find these anywhere that you go. So we're going through top 5 beginner bourbons. Let's jump right into it. We're not doing overall ratings because each bottle that you see listed here, I've reviewed individually at some point. These are 5 of the most popular types, as well as 5 of the most consistent types of bourbon that I've seen out there. So let's go through them real quick. I have them organized in order of price. So before I pour them, let's just quickly go through each one in price point as we go up. So this is Elijah Craig's 12-year-old. I can find this around here for about $25 to $28. This is a great buy. It's a 12-year-old nicely aged bourbon. This is probably the only one on this list that has a little bit of a more, how am I going to describe this? A little bit more of a developed palate. This one may not be the best for a beginner. So, but it's still a good beginner bourbon, don't get me wrong, and the price point is amazing, but this one here is a little bit more meaty. Now we have Eagle Rare. This is a fantastic beginner's bourbon. It's slightly buttery. This is going to run you about $30. We have Woodford Reserve, a very classic, completely consistent bourbon. This is going to run you about $35. You have Maker's 46, not Maker's Mark, Maker's 46, and this is going to run you about $40. And then a big jump in price, we've got Blanton's, which is going to run you $55 to $60. All of these, like I mentioned, are readily available bourbons. You can find them in pretty much any liquor store, most bars that at least have some kind of good whiskey selection. And everyone that has tasted these that I know likes them. Not the best bourbons out there, but if you're looking for bourbons between a $25 to $40-ish price range, most of these are going to hit that target. So before I go pour, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour each one, I'm going to try it, taste it, tell you what I think, and then that's it. And it'll be a very quick one. Just a very quick taste, smell, and then move on to the next. So before I get into that, guys, the biggest tip I can give you getting into bourbon, I'm fairly new too, by the way. I think I've mentioned that to a couple of you. I've only been collecting for close to 2 years now. So I'm fairly new. I don't have all the really, really cool stuff. I have some really good stuff, but I don't have all the rarest stuff. I don't have 5 bottles of Pappy Van Winkle in my basement. These are ones that you guys should start with to see if you're a true bourbon drinker, to see if you can drink it neat and like it. Because if you're going to drink bourbon, so here are my tips. If you're going to drink bourbon, drink it neat. Put it in drinks too, but if you're going to go for a higher price point, drink it neat. Number 2, if you're going to be drinking bourbon neat and you want to buy bourbon to drink it, you need to spend more than $25. Technically more than $30, because this thing is just an absolute anomaly. All the good bourbons are $30 and up. And I don't even want to say and up. Your price point's $30 to $60. When you're a beginner bourbon, that's where you're at. $30 to $60 is where you should be looking for good bourbon. Don't spend more because you won't appreciate it. Don't buy $15, $20, $25 bourbon because it's not that it's absolutely terrible. All bourbon is good, but it's not going to be something that you can drink neat. So those are my tips for you guys. And and last tip, use one of these. Only use one of these to drink it neat. This is perfect for bourbon. This is a glass that you can find online, Amazon, for $5. I'll link one after this. They're like maybe $4 or $5 a glass. They hold here, they stop evaporation, and they're good for nosing. And they're good for moving bourbon around too, so or any whiskey. So buy a set of these if you're going to be drinking neat. So I'm going to pour all of these really quick. There goes my wife, who apparently wanted to be in the video today, which she's never done before, but she probably doesn't even realize she's in the video. So there she goes. No starting over now. So we're pouring each one here. There's the Elijah 12. This is the Eagle. I'm pouring a little bit lighter than normal because this will be fun. This is Woodford. Maker's 46. As far as like the actual bottles of all these too, I really like the bottles too. So these are cool ones for bar shelves and collections too. Obviously this is my favorite because it's the neatest one, if you guys can see that well there. But they're all nice bottles. And then the Blanton's. And actually 2 of these are brand new bottles. These 2 here, I haven't even tried these yet. This one I picked up just to do this video and because I ran out of Maker's 46. And this one I'm pouring here, the Blanton's, was actually given to me as a thank you from a friend that I helped named Dimitri. And alright, so there we go. We've got them all poured. So now that we've got them poured, I'm going to kind of condense here a little bit so we can get the colors a little closer together. So there you go with all of the color. I'm not going to put a sheet behind them. I hope you guys can get a decent look based on that. But as far as color goes, you're really very similar between all of these. I would say the Blanton's is a little bit darker or a little redder. The Eagle Rare is a little bit darker. These 2 are a little lighter. This is between. So you're getting a good coppery, maybe even on this one a little bit darker into the mahogany level, but they're all pretty coppery, brownish colored bourbons. They're on the medium side of that scale there. So let me just run through them real quick. Let me start with the Elijah Craig 12. So the Elijah Craig 12 is one of my favorite sipping bourbons because it's cheap and because it's good and because it's aged 12 years. And on the nose, you've got dried fruits, you've got dark fruits, you've got a tiny bit of tobacco, some oak, and you've got a nice, real subtle hint of vanilla. Now the taste on this one, and this is why I mentioned, this is 94 proof if I remember correctly. Yep, 94. The taste on this one, it's a little bit more developed than these other ones. So once you really get into bourbon, just know that this is a great go-to. The taste on this one is a little bit more leather and some mint and some dark chocolate, dark dry chocolate, dark dried fruits, a lot of the darker notes of bourbon, and leathery and tobacco-y. So it's a really complex bourbon for $25. In fact, at one point, I'm going to buy an entire case of these to keep in my house because I'm worried that this won't be around in the future. I'm very worried about that because there's not many 12-year-old products that are this cheap. So I highly recommend this for your collection. Eagle Rare, this is my go-to sipping whiskey. It's a good blend between a little bit darker of bourbon, a little bit meatier bourbon, but also got a little butter to it. So this is Eagle Rare. This is a where's the proof on this guy? I don't remember. It's 45%. So I think that's going to put us like, it's going to put us around 90, if I remember correctly. Why the hell isn't it on here? I never knew that about Eagle Rare. Huh. Don't see the proof. Oh, there we go. Yeah, it's 90 proof. 45% is 90 proof. Okay, so Eagle Rare. Sorry about that, guys. It's on the back in this tiny little print. Usually it's right on the front. So Eagle Rare. Let's try this real quick. The nose is a little less developed on this one, but you're getting a little bit of that butter and that butterscotch, and then just followed by classic bourbon notes, some sweet corn, some toasted oak, some barrel char, and just the tiniest bit of leather, tiny bit of leather. I forgot to cleanse my palate on that one, but that's okay, this one came through well. So this is smoother than the last one. It's not as much of the leather and the tobacco and the bite. This is smoother. It's still got some bite to it, but it's smoother with the less oak, almost no leather, just a tiny bit. It takes the mint and tobacco flavors out, so those aren't in there. Mainly what you're tasting is the butter, the butterscotch, some lighter dried fruits. This one I have a tiny bit of floral and oak notes to it, and just a tiny subtle underlying tone of some caramel. And then we have Woodford Reserve. So let me cleanse my palate for this one. It's been a while since I've tried this. Woodford is my go-to mixing bourbon, which is why there's so much of this bottle gone. I mix things with it. Manhattan, although a lot of times I use rye Manhattans, old-fashioned, stuff like that. It's not a cheap mixing bourbon because this is going to run you, like I said, about 35, but it just seems to go pretty well. So let's smell this one. Now this one I actually really enjoy the nose on. I've got more sweetness. I've got more sweetness, more of the really light fruits, more of the vanilla. A really good hint of vanilla. Let's try it. So the reason that I do like this one, and I think it's a fantastic looking bottle and you can find it anywhere. The reason I don't jump on it as my sipping bourbon is simply because with that one, I'm tasting so much barrel. So much barrel. And it's not, I think the aging on this, you're probably going to be, doesn't say, but if I remember they're doing these 4 to 6 years. The aging, there's just something going on here. Maybe where they distill it, maybe the setting it's in, maybe the temperature, the pressure, I don't know. But I'm tasting so much barrel. It's like biting into a charred shoebox, a charred piece of cardboard. But after that initial taste goes away, you've got the sweetness, you've got a lot of that vanilla, you've got a good amount of the caramel too, and not a lot of any harsh notes like the leather or anything else. It's just got that weird initial taste that I just can't seem to get over when I'm drinking Woodford. It's unique. It is unique. Maker's 46. You'll hear me talk about this a lot. So, Maker's 46 is a unique, also, I just used that word, is a unique type of bourbon because they take Maker's Mark and then they distill it with a barrel that has oak staves inserted throughout it. So it gives us this nice toasted, walnutty, almondy, caramelly, honey flavor to it. It's just so much different. And I hate Maker's Mark neat. I love Maker's 46. I don't understand how one little thing can do that much, but that's the beauty of whiskey making. So let's smell this one. And this guy up front is just honey all the way. It's honey, it's sweetness, it's caramel, it's just very luscious on the nose. This is a great beginner bourbon. This is one of the finest beginner bourbons out there because it's so smooth and so neat and so light, and it smells good, tastes good. So let's try it. This is that melt in your mouth whiskey. It's like a, I think I've described this before as a Werther's. It's like a Werther's dipped in honey, backed with this nice toasty, almondy, oaky flavor. And I just can't ever really beat this if I want something sweet. So keep in mind, I don't always want one thing. When I want sweet, I go here. When I want something that's smooth with sweetness, I go here. Or when I want big earthy bite and big character bite, I go here. That brings us on to our last one, which is Blanton's. I'm cleansing my palate once again. Between each one, I'm trying to cleanse it a little bit. So Blanton's, best bottle, not on the market, but one of the best bottles. These are collectible pieces. Really cool story, really cool bottle, decanter style bottle. Each bottle's hand labeled. Really like everything about Blanton's. The price point's a little bit too much for me, but I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. That's a brand new barrel, so this is throwing me off a little bit. So normally on this one I'm going to get more cinnamon, but not a lot of cinnamon on this one. Just a tiny hint of cinnamon, and then some more of that toasted oak, that toasted almond, a little bit of the caramel on that side, and that's pretty much what I'm smelling, minus, I'm not smelling any tobacco on this one. And corn, obviously sweet corn. As I taste this one, it's got a lot more caramel and oak than what I remember in my last bottle of Blanton's at. So caramel, oak, a little bit of heat, some dark fruit notes, which is probably why this is, you know, darker on this side, is this maybe a little bit more charred of a barrel. Definitely tasting a hint of that darkness, of that barrel char. But smooth, nothing offensive, all in good balance. So that's Blanton's. So that was all of them, guys. This is, can't see the time on this video. Actually, that's not that bad. This is any bourbon out there, or this is for any beginner bourbon drinker out there that is really looking to get into drinking bourbon. I think you could pick up any or all of these bottles and start a great collection for yourself before you go buying something that is going to be just catered toward one specific taste. And without spending, you know, 80 to 100, which is not a lot for good anything, good whiskey, but 80 to 100 is a price point that's becoming more popular for bourbon. And a lot of it's like marketing stuff, like an annual release or a limited edition or a limited release. And I fall for that. I love the limited stuff, but only because I collect. If you're just getting into it, don't fall for that like limited, or spending more is always good. Spending more is not always good. You need to know what you're buying before you spend more. And especially if it's going to be something that doesn't even fit your flavor profile. So start with these and go from there. And I think that'll serve you guys real well. And let me know what you think. And let me know what you started with. You know, I was thinking what might be fun at the end of this video, guys, is I want you in the comment section to tell me the first bourbon you tried, whether you were 15 drinking underage or whether you were 35 years old and you're just trying your first glass or bottle of bourbon. And I want you to tell me what it was, and I want you to tell me what you thought. So if you were 15 years old and you tried bourbon and you puked 5 minutes later, I'd love to hear that story. If you were 35 years old and you tried your first bourbon, you're like, holy shit, I've been drinking scotch all my life. Where the hell has this stuff been? If you want to explain that to me, I think that would be the coolest thing for us all to share in our community here. I'll tell you about the first one that I tried and my experience with it. It's not any glamorous story, but it's really what got me into drinking bourbon the first time I tried it neat. So I'll post mine. I'll be the first one to go. So I look forward to reading those, guys. I look forward to seeing you next week. No idea what's to come, but I will see you next week for Whiskey Wednesday. Have a great day. Thanks for joining me.